She learned her voice through a poetry. She strongly believes in the power of spoken words, its ability to transform a generation. Welcome very much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to pick from what you said. Inspiration. When we go back home, are we still inspired? Even though we don't have 24-hour electricity, there are no air conditions in our homes, your car breaks down or in a ditch somewhere, Are you still inspired? How do you stay inspired?
How do I stay inspired? Well, the context is being in Nigeria, you tend to find that a lot of the societal conditions might not want you to perform at your optimal best. So just like I said, there are lots of things around you, because while we were in the United States, we had basically everything that we needed. We didn't have to put on a generator, we had lights, they gave us money for food, it was a soft life basically. So, and then leaving that environment and coming back home, and the first thing that hits you is the heat. And and you realize that, okay, you don't have as much light, and you probably, now we had to queue for fuel and all of that. It's really easy to just forget everything and go back into your old, or get really depressed with the old situation. But then, if you actually have a greater intent, what exactly are you trying to achieve? For me, I realize that no matter how bad things are, I have people that come to my school and I have to teach them. I could easily say, go home. But no, I have a dream of empowering young women, teaching them how to make clothing in a professional way. So that's actually the main purpose. And I realized that if there are people who are looking out for young Africans, young Nigerians, and they can actually camp you together and teach you basic leadership skills, it's not, they don't expect to throw money away. So that's enough of an inspiration to realize that there are people who are actually banking on you. So you can't actually afford to sit back and, lazy about and do nothing. So I think that's the major inspiration for me.
Your journey into poetry, especially the spoken word poetry, how did that start?
Okay, so I would say as early as 2019, I didn't know I could actually do spoken word poetry. So I used to write poems while I was growing up, but it was basically just like an hobby. Like I have an exam, I'm reading for this really difficult test, and like my mind is wandering, and I, take that opportunity to pen some things down. But then I never actually outrightly called myself a poet. And then while we were in Austin, Texas, they said, okay, we're going to have an Ignite speech. And out of 25 of you, we're going to select the best speech, and that person is going to represent the university in Washington, D.C. And while I was there, I was very quiet. So I have like different personalities. Sometimes I'm really quiet and sometimes I'm really outgoing. So I realized that I had not actually projected myself other than being the young Muslim woman who does not shake men. And I realized that I didn't want that to be the only thing I was known for while I was living there. And then I was like, I'm going to represent my university in Washington, D.C. So when they told us that, I got to it, and then I brought some of my poems, and then I coined it together with some speech. And after the speech, people came and they were like, you this quiet girl. Like, they didn't expect that I could actually speak that well, or that I could actually read poetry. And I remember when I got to Washington, D.C., and I was going to speak, some of the Nigerian fellows who were not in my state, in Austin, Texas, it was like when you saw me on the stage, you were scared. Like, hey, this auntie that does not talk like this, she wants to represent Nigeria, she will not embarrass us. And then it was like, it came to me and I was like, he's actually so glad that, he's sorry that I actually had that representation of me, and he's so glad that I actually did over and beyond. And it was at that point I realized that, okay, I think I can actually do some poetry. And then during the lockdown, we had all of that time, and I decided to do something. I said, okay, if I can do poetry, but then I'm the kind of person who I get motivated from external sources. I'm not very self-driven. And that's an important thing about knowing who you are. So like at that point I realized that when I have someone standing on my neck, I actually go over and beyond. When I have a deadline, I go over and beyond. So I called one of my friends. I was like, okay, I need an accountability partner. I want to be writing poetry. often, and I know if I put it to myself, I'm not going to do it. So I need you to give me a topic, and I need you to give me a deadline. If I meet the deadline, fine. If I don't, I'm going to pay you some money. It was just 1,000, but then if you have to pay 1,000 over and over again,
it's a lot of money.
Yeah. So, and then I was like, okay, fine. So, it comes, it gives me a topic, and then I delay until like a day to the deadline, like, I'm not dropping 1,000 naira. So I put something down. So I started to gather some of my poems, and then like some months after, I said, okay, let me just try to read it and see how it goes. And I just did a video. I was in my office and I recorded it, and the kind of encouragement that I got, it just made me realize that okay, you can actually do this. So I started to listen to lots of spoken word poetry performances. I started going for events. Sometimes when there's an event and they need poets there, I just send like a pitch. Okay, I'd like to perform at your event, which was actually me going out of my comfort zone. I'm usually the kind of person that stays there until you call me. So I actually outrightly reached out and said, I can actually do poetry and I'd like to be at your event. And gradually I started to do a lot of that. So I would say that I didn't start out knowing that I would actually really do spoken word poetry. I didn't even know I could do spoken word poetry. But by pushing myself and doing it over and over again, I think I actually got better, and I'm still pushing myself.
From 2019 to 2022, like 3 years
Yes,
going
3
on
years.
4.
Yes.
How far so far?
Well, it's because poetry is more of an hobby for me. I think I don't look at it from the professional lens. I look at it more as something I do after I finish teaching or after I give my clients their clothes. But then the response that I have gotten is starting to set me on a path where I'm thinking, okay, maybe you should actually take this more seriously. And I think that's what's important about putting yourself out there. Sometimes when I put a post out there, I might get just like 2 likes or 3 likes, and then sometimes you're like, is the poem not nice? But then I listen to it again, I'm like, no, it's nice. The fact that you got 3 likes does not mean it is not nice. And coincidentally, I realized that people are actually watching, even if they are not responding to what I'm putting out there. Because I think 2 months back, thereabouts, a lady reached out to me and she was like, okay, the Nigerian Bar Association is going to be having their week and they would like me to come and perform at the event. And I was like, oh, nice. Because I didn't even know she was actually listening to my poems or even that I could perform. And then after a while, she was like, and for me, like I said, it's an hobby. So I was like, okay, cool. And she was like, okay, what's your quote?
Like, sounded interesting.
For your hobby.
So I'm like, quote? I'm like, okay, let me get back to you. So I called one of my friends and I was like, Tosin, this person said, what's my quote? Like, do you pay people to come and read first? She's like, yes, sir. So like, I think that was like, it was an eye-opening experience for me to realize that I can actually do a lot with the things that I have, and I don't necessarily have to play small. It's a journey, it's an ongoing journey, and I'm still on that path. That's why I'm here with you now.
We'll talk about that when we come back. We'll take a break now. We'll be back. Stay with us.
All right.
There is a silence that accompanies a broken heart, a shattered dream, an unfulfilled wish, unrequited love. It is a special type of breaking, a tumultuous overturning that reverberates in every cell. No one knows the silence of a broken heart like the broken hearted. If we looked closely, we would see it. Behind that humor, strange status updates, a sudden extrovertness, or even introvertness. Unreplied texts, I apologize, I left you on red, missed calls, silence. Imagine we could see emotional pain. If we could put a band-aid on hearts, people would heal faster. But when the heart is rent asunder, all you see is eye bags and a crooked smile, so we say, you'll be fine. If there were a monitor that goes beep, beep, a storyteller of your progress. If we heard the tales of your healing, we would come to your aid when the beep becomes something like a siren, a desperate will, signaling the impending exit of a reluctant soul. We would come. We would sprint, whatever it takes. CPR, a call, a text, a sincere how are you? Let's go out. You need a break, whatever it takes. But we can't, or we don't. Do we? A heavy heart, a heavy head. You carry this load with so much grace. Remember, your body is not a skill. Your relevance does not lie in the weight that you can carry. Relieve yourself of the need to prove a point. Be soft. Reach out. Hot girl, soft girl, what matters is a happy girl. Understand that life is not a bed of roses, and if it were, even roses have thorns. A day for you, a day against you. When it feels like the weight of the world is upon your shoulders, sleep, eat, pray. Reach out, connect, speak to a treasured friend. Whatever it is that makes you light, be light. Stay here.
Stay here with us here. Sure, I guess it's still here with us. Kehinde Oladeji, thank you so much. So,
Still being here. Now, that particular poem we just listened to now, the spoken words poetry we just listened to now, what inspired it?
I think I realized that a lot of people grieve differently. And sometimes there are signals that people give out that
What makes you come to that realization of all the emotions in this world you could think about? Grief.
Yes, because grief is something that I'm very familiar with because of a couple of life occurrences.
Okay.
And, when people look at me, they say, oh, you're strong. Because I'm not that kind of person that breaks down and like, oh, I'm sick and admits me in the hospital kind of person. Even if I'm breaking inside, I'm still getting to work. I'm still doing what I have to do. But then sometimes you actually see some of that in maybe a mood swing or maybe a sad status update. So, I talked about that. So, sometimes we miss out on some signs because we expect that people would grieve the way we grieve. So, for me, I would easily recognize grief in someone that grieves like me. Another person might actually grieve by being more outgoing. They might attend more events. They might do things they usually would not do. And no one would know that they're actually going through a very difficult phase. So me talking about that, it was more of a personal story and also passing the message across that we should actually look out more for those subtle signs that people give out and maybe be more kind because we actually don't know where anyone is hurt. And the fact that they are smiling doesn't necessarily mean that they're actually happy. So I think that was a major inspiration behind the poem. And to also say that, no matter how bad things are, we must recognize that, that's life. It's not all, glamorous and, So you actually have to take the good days and you have to take the bad days and you just have to strive irrespective and stay here. Stay here in the sense that some people, when the weight becomes too much, they cave in. Some people commit suicide. So when I say stay here, don't go. You have people who love you. No matter how bad things are, you have your family, they're rooting for you. You have friends. You have, perhaps kids that are looking up to you. If you stay here, it's actually for yourself and for them as well, no matter how hard things are. So that was...
okay, let's talk about poetry moving a few years ahead. Because it's spoken words started a few years back. it used to be writing it out. It used to be chanting it, for different languages. But for recent years now, you have people come out and then they speak it. It's not really like a poem, but it's different from the usual. Where do you see this going in the near future?
Well, just like 5 years back or so, a lot of people did not know what spoken word was really about. Although we've always had it for years, but it's just recently that we've been picking up on it. Like, okay, this is actually nice. We have the likes of Alhan Islam, which, she goes to major events where she actually reads poetry, and people are saying, oh, this is actually something. So now we're having, I see the coming years to, we would have poets like the contemporary artists we have now that are renowned. We have, they sing songs and everybody knows them, they go around. I see poetry, spoken word poetry actually going to that level whereby concerts are organized. We have some of that already, and where it becomes on a bigger level whereby you organize a lot of spoken word artists together and you actually have a performance. That way, we have Titilope Shonuga, and she just released her album Swim. So this is also something that we're not very familiar with. Spoken word artists releasing an album. It's mostly musicians that we know that release albums. So, she has an album on Spotify and she's making money out of that. So a lot of people say that, you can actually make money as a poet. But I think the narrative is changing, because if we can actually have people pay for, because if you have your poem on Spotify, you actually get paid some royalty, So if I have poets making money from that, it actually becomes more like a proper profession, not like an hobby. So you have Titilope Shonuga she's currently not in Nigeria, but she's in Canada. So they have this poetry association that she's part of, which is another representation for Nigeria as well. So we're actually picking up on spoken word poetry. It's getting bigger, and I see like in the coming years, it's actually going to be like spoken word poets are going to be on the same level with the popular artists that we have now. Of course, the audience is going to be different because not many people are fans of poetry, but the audience that actually loves poetry, they're actually going to support spoken word artists the same way we see the support for the likes of Davido, the likes of Wizkid and all of that. That's actually what I see spoken word going. So of course, and then we have people who publish their books. We've always had that, but more of the performance now, something like storytelling that people are actually very enthralled by, So that's actually what I see coming forward.
When you put up posts of what you do, and then you get as much as 2 likes and 3 likes. As much as when you get as much as 2 or 3 likes. Now, of course, it's kind of dampening to the spirit. But then, how do you pick up?
I think what's important is not, pulling your drive from the response, because there are days when you're going to have like 250 people like it and maybe like 500 comments. If you thrive too much on that, when you don't have much feedback, it's going to dampen your mood. So when the going is good, it's good. Don't live in the moment. Yeah, but then don't ride. Like, don't make that be the main purpose. Okay, you pass the message across. You're happy that people actually reacted to it. Yeah, that's good. If you let it get too much in your head, when you don't get that response, you're not going to post anymore.
But then what's your rating of acceptance of the spoken word form of poetry now?
What's like from the response?
Rating, yes. Your rating of the acceptance.
I think
in general, not just yours. In general,
acceptance of the spoken word poetry, how would you rate it?
For me, I would say 6.5 over 10. And then average, that's good. It's fair, it can be better. But I would say 6.5 over 10.
Okay, so which means there's hope for spoken word poetry.
Yes, definitely.
All right, great. Thank you very much for coming, Kehinde Slits.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time. Kehinde Oladeji is a spoken word poet, and she's a young lady who is doing quite well for herself. All the best in your future endeavors, babe.
Thank you very much.
And then we'll take another break now to come back with the concluding part of the mid-morning show. Do not go anywhere. It's still the mid-morning show.